the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a motion to accept tonight's agenda?
So moved.
All right, David, and second?
Second?
Deb? All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and now we start with something very enjoyable, which is recognition of students. And I'll pass it off to Dr. Harrison.
So I'd like to invite my colleague, Mr. Cohen, our high school principal, to come to the mic. Tonight we have the privilege of honoring some outstanding Irvington High School students for wonderful accomplishments, and accomplishments that we know are just the tip of the iceberg for all these young people. So, Mr. Cohen, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thanks to the board. So always a great opportunity when I get a chance to come to the Board of Ed meeting and speak, but it's even that much more special when I get to come and speak about students and honor them. So tonight we have 2 situations and 4 students to be able to speak about. And the first student that I want to talk about, some people may know that we have a team at the school called our Academic Challenge Team. It's a club, and they compete in just that, academic challenges. So as part of that, this student not only has been part of our team for the last few years and has been a tremendous anchor on our team, but he's also been able to get involved in some individual events. And there's a history bee and a geography bee as an individual that he's been able to compete in. So last year he became eligible, and he competed in White Plains, and through that eligibility he was able to then compete in Arlington, Virginia. And what was amazing in each of those situations is that when he was at those events, there was also a need for, there were also team competitions going on in those events. And both of those events were not ones where our academic challenge team was there. He was only there as an individual. So he actually was even able to compete as a team against other teams, but as an individual. And by the way, won some of those matches, might I add. But the most amazing part of it all was that through the great work that he did, he became eligible to compete over the summer in Germany. And it was the international competitions, and the first competition that he was a part of was the International History Olympiad. And there were 3 main areas of competition for that: the International History Bee, the International History Battery Exam, and the International History Written Exam. And this young man managed to finish second in the entire world and received the silver medal in the 2018 International History Written Exam. And in addition to that, he also finished 6th in the world in the 2018 International History Battery Exam. In addition to that, there's also the International Geography Bee. Again, overall individual championships, and this is worldwide. And in this case, he managed to finish, once again, second in the entire world and received the silver medal in the 2018 International Geometry Exam. So, I'm sorry, Geography Exam. Yes, thank you. I'm a math guy by trade, so I like to make everything. So it is with just amazing celebration, a great honor and recognition that I introduce everyone to Zachary Rosman and congratulate him for this great achievement. Congratulations, Zach. So the next 3 students that we would like to recognize and honor are based on what is called the National Merit Scholarship Program. So every year, students across the country take part in the PSATs. Here in Irvington, we provide them to all of our juniors at district expense, something that we've been committed to for the last few years. And based on that, all juniors that take the exam are then eligible for the National Merit Scholarship Program. So last year, there were approximately 1.6 million students that took the exam nationwide as juniors. And of those 1.6 million, what the program does is they identify the top 16,000 that took the exam as juniors last year. We are fortunate and honored to know that we have 3 of those 16,000 here at Irvington High School. What's great about the program is that by earning the distinction of National Merit semifinalists, the 3 students that are part of the 16,000 are now eligible to apply for and become recognized, hopefully, as finalists. And we'll find out about that in February. And assuming that they become finalists, they'll then become eligible for approximately 7,500 scholarships that could be worth in excess of $31 million, and those will be offered up in the spring. So it is a truly exciting program. 3 students should be incredibly proud. We are certainly very excited and proud of their accomplishments, and to be able to say that at Irvington High School we have 3 national merit semifinalists this year, and hoping that it becomes 3 finalists. So with that, I would like to call up, and before you come up, I will just say we are holding off on certificates because at this point you're semifinalists, but we know that there are big things yet to come, so there will be certificates in the future. But please, when we call your name, come on up and shake all of our hands and accept your congratulations to Ethan Chang, Braden Denoyan, and Chris Minwang.
Well done. Congratulations. Well done. Well done.
And we wish you luck.
So great.
Well done.
You get to shake anybody's hand?
So the audit report was omitted
For him,
Yeah, of course he was. Of course he was.
So we accepted the agenda without that.
so we're going to accept
let's be clear about one thing.
record to accept it.
Clear about one thing.
While she's doing that, we don't need a motion.
Yeah.
So,
So we're going to move now to our administrative reports, and I'll leave it to you again, Dr. Harrison, to
great.
share some news.
Great. Good evening, everyone. There's so many exciting things happening across the district that I'm going to highlight just a few. But in doing so, always want to remind everyone to stay tuned in to Board of Education meetings, to our Facebook page, to district and school level weekly communications, because there's just so many great things that are being reported upon that are both the accomplishments of our students, opportunities for our students, but also the great work of our faculty and staff. Some examples of this good news is work that's happening across the district. I do want to highlight our district-wide recycling initiative. We spoke of it a little bit in our budget process last year, and we had a great pilot program that was led by students and staff at Main Street School. And based upon that success, we are really expanding across the district. And in doing so, if you've seen the Dow's Lane newsletter this week, the impacts have been significant. In a short period of time, since it's been implemented this school year, the Dow's Lane cafeteria trash has been reduced by over 50%. We had, in the past, 8 bags of trash a day going in the dumpsters from the cafeteria. That has been reduced to 4. But impressively, that's about 104 pounds of a day before, and now we're seeing about 39 pounds a day of garbage hitting the trash. That equates to 19,000 pounds in the past to approximately 4,000 pounds on the path that we're on now. So, you know, we are doing our part, but most importantly, our students are taking the lead here and taking ownership. And this initiative has different layers to it. Not only do we know that there's certain items that have to end up in the trash, but we have increased our recycling initiative. We are separating liquids from our trash, and we are also beginning to compost. which is obviously taking lots of material that can be used and enrich our soil rather than ending up in a landfill. So kudos to our students and staff across the district, but some great examples of success specifically at Dow's Lane. Mr. Cohen mentioned the PSAT and acknowledging our wonderful students before, but also I do want to note that that's offered to our juniors. We also offer the pre-ACT to our sophomores. And this is something that isn't done everywhere and something that we should be proud of here in Irvington, that we provide this experience for all of our students because it helps them have a level of confidence and be familiar with the assessments as they begin their collegiate plans. So something that we should be proud of at the high school. Also at the campus, I do want to remind everybody, and there's been communications heading out from both the middle school and high school, that we are running a late bus this year, and the goal here is to be able to support students that want to stay after school for assistance or participate in after-school activities. There are 2 buses that depart the campus at approximately 4:25 p.m. each day. One bus heads south, the other heads north. So we're going to be tracking participation over the coming months. We expect it to start kicking up this month with clubs going into full effect at the middle school in particular. But we're hoping to see great student participation there, and as we committed to at the board, we will evaluate that early in the new year as well. You know, we talked a lot about security in our school district, and I'm pleased to report that we continue to make progress on our enhanced security practices. At the last board meeting, I referenced a very generous grant that will be accepted tonight by the Board of Education, bless you, from the PTSA that is supporting nearly $30,000 worth of video cameras that are in the process of being installed in each of our building schools. But additionally, we're looking at other higher levels of training that have taken place. We've had training for each school's BERT, B-E-R-T, which is actually a federal acronym, not just schools, which is a Building Emergency Response Team training. And it's unfortunate that we have to go this route, but these key folks in each school building, and it's a team that's made up of administrators, custodians, teachers, the psychologists, the guidance counselors, are all seen as first responders and managers of a crisis that can occur in a school. So each had extensive training that took place in the first month of the school year, and then in turn those staff members are actually doing turnkey training for their colleagues in their respective schools. Additionally, we have begun to roll out our more thorough emergency drills in each of our schools with new protocols that are in place that are really focused on clarity of communication and intent around the messages that come out during drills. We've been doing our lockdown drills in each of our buildings, and they've been not only supported by Alteris, but we've had the Irvington Police present supporting us in each of those drills. So it's something, again, that is of great excitement. Then finally, you know, to give or maybe not finally, but to shout out to some of our staff members. As we know, we have wonderful teachers and administrators and support staff in each of our schools. We're proud to share that Jennifer DeLisi Hall, an English teacher here in the high school, has been honored with an Educator of Excellence Award from the New York State English Council. She's one of 23 teachers across the state to receive this prestigious award, and she will be acknowledged at the upcoming Education Council Conference in Albany later this month. We also have 3 teachers from the district who are invited to share their best practices with other science teachers at the Science Teachers Association of New York State at the annual conference that is held in Rochester from November 2nd to 5th. We're very pleased and honored to see that Karen Bodner, Amy Panitz, and our instructional coach Sarah Rust will be presenting at the conference. So it's nice to see some of our outstanding staff members getting this level of recognition. I do just want to share that we're in the midst of some Wi-Fi enhancements on the campus. Over recent weeks, we've taken great steps to increase our bandwidth significantly across the district, and now we're in the process of adding a number of access points that will not only speed things up, but will ease our students' and staff's engagement with the internet to support learning. And then finally, and a real finally this time before I turn it off to Dr. Kaur, homecoming was last week. Want to send my thanks to a number of trustees that were present. But it was a tremendous experience, not only to root on our student athletes, but just to celebrate some Irvington Bulldog pride. And what's been notable over the last 2 years is, to me, is the number of younger families with younger children that are attending the events. So it's nice to see that level of engagement, and folks are going to have that long-term connection to our programs here at the high school, even though their children aren't here yet. But I want to give some credit where credit is due and thank the Bulldog Booster Club for all of their support, because they are making a lot of that possible by having some of our younger students playing at halftime of some of the events, and encouraging other folks to come on out. And we want to congratulate them on their 1-year anniversary, because they kicked off their first activities for homecoming last year. So we want to give them accolades and thanks for the role that they played in making homecoming a great experience. So kudos. So Dr. Kaur, a lot happening on the PD front lately.
Sure. I actually just want to build on the announcement that you shared about our 3 science teachers, because that's really a direct result. I know there have been questions of our work with Helen Pashley. So Helen is very, very involved at the state level, which is one of the reasons why we love bringing her into district. She is always ahead of the curve on what's changing, what's going on, the development of assessments, timelines. And so Helen is a tremendous asset for us here in Irvington. And it's through the work with Helen that our middle school teachers ended up being invited to present at the conference. And they're presenting on the work that they're doing with the development of the next gen, the New York State Science Learning Standards. So it's really, it's impressive. And when Helen saw the level of work and collaborate on some of the work, it became evident that our teachers had something to share that teachers around the state are going to be pretty impressed to see. So we're excited and proud, very proud. So I'll start today, Superintendent's Conference Day, the first one. So I'll share, started off with a little bit of a glitch. Our day at the secondary level was focused around Rubicon Atlas, which is out on the West Coast, and it is a system that in all my years has never gone down, and this morning it went down. It was unbelievable, but they had people on it, and so the system, Rubicon, was up and running by 9:30, got everybody started in some of the beginning of the day activities, and then teachers were able to get in and continue doing their work, but it was a moment. At the elementary level today, we refocused on Fontes and Pinnell and the benchmark assessment system that we rolled out during the Superintendent's Conference Day in August when we started school. So today was a follow-up where teachers were able to share a sample of a diagnostic they've done and start to learn and practice how to assess students and use the system accurately. I think I might have shared this with you. We've been using Fontes and Pinnell, I would say without consistency, for at least 10 years now. And when we rolled it out originally, we basically did a half day of training, and we kind of crossed our fingers and hoped that, everybody got it. So we're pleased that this year we've been able to roll it out with a much higher level of consistency, with clear expectations across both buildings, and a commitment. Our commitment is through Nancy Deacon, our instructional coach, our building administrators, and the teachers themselves, to say, how do we ensure that we're doing this well, that we're doing it, that we're of quality, and we're doing constant check-ins to say, is this working? What are we doing? Are we accurately assessing? How do we know that we have that inter-rater reliability from one teacher, on a teacher from one student to the next, but then obviously across our grade levels amongst all of our teachers? So the focus today at the elementary level was Fontes and Pinnell, and at the secondary level was unit development, and that was assisted through Sarah Rust, as well as all of our building administrators were in and out, working with teachers, leading some sessions, and just being good thought partners in other sessions. So we were excited. One of the things that we found with last Wednesday being our first PLRD day was at the secondary level, both sets of building administrators had teachers create their plan for today. So that was a really nice way to see PLRD in action right away. So rather than teachers coming in this morning and starting to, spending an hour figuring it out, what am I going to do? They spent the last Wednesday PLRD doing sort of a self-inventory and really deciding where am I going to start, so that when teachers came in this morning, they were ready to get going right away. All of the buildings introduced PLRD to the teachers, and when I say that, the teachers knew it was coming, but it was the first official day. So all of the building administrators started, and just restating again for everybody in the same room at the same time, this is what this time is for, and we were able to see it, I think, for what it was designed for. So at the elementary level, the first PLRD,
And just to insert while we're still getting familiar, that's the early release Wednesdays that happen every other Wednesday over the course of the year.
yes.
For professional learning by teachers.
Are you going to go for it? Professional learning
Release
release
days.
days.
Release days.
There we go. Okay. So we have sort of this running chart now for elementary and secondary so that we could start to see the continuum of how we're using the days. I think we want to be able to say, like, are we finding we're using the days for the same thing over the time? What is the range of how we're using the time? And how much of it is to do some of the systemic work so we're not pulling teachers from classrooms, and how much of it is more example like I just shared, which was having that extra hour that was able to set us up for the superintendent's conference day. So we really want to be able to examine our time and be able to look at it and say, how is this time being used? Is it effective? And can we do it differently? And as we grow into it, might we also use it more consistently for certain things versus other things? We don't know that yet. We've had one. But at Dow's Lane, they focused on three key things. We had our RTI data review. So that might have been something that would happen during the day. We were able to use some PLRD time for that. That's a good example. At Dow's Lane, we also had some teachers working in their unit planners, and our K-1 teachers got to unpack their science kits. So that's another good example. Those science kits come, and there's a ton of materials inside, and there's a lot to know about it, and having an hour to do that is an hour that I don't know where we would have gotten that hour from. So it was really, really a nice opportunity. At Main Street, the 4th and 5th grade teachers focused on ELA and their unit planners, looking specifically at informational assured reading experience. At the secondary level, at the middle school, David and Allison led. Remember, this was linked to a faculty meeting day, so it was also an extended period, focused on transfer goals and thinking about developing the student thinking section of the unit planner, self-assessment of their teaching thinking and their planners so that they were ready to go for today. Similarly, at the high school, they planned for the alignment of classroom activities to the learning goals. So we have our 4 instructional learning goals focused on knowledge, skill, making meaning, and transfer. So we're trying to use that language very consistently and saying to teachers, if those are the goals, how are you planning for them? And where is that reflected in your unit planner? As well as obviously through ultimately the lens of assessment. So our high school teachers also did their inventory, which got them ready for today. So that was this combo of PLRD so closely linked to Superintendent's Conference Day. Obviously, this won't happen again in this way until March. So we'll see how PLRD unfolds, though, and linking it to our faculty meetings we think is going to be advantageous for everybody. The last piece I would just share is we had our first Amplify training, and it's awesome. It is just amazing. Teachers are, I won't say ready to go, but excited. The materials are.
Can I just ask what is Amplify?
Oh, are you really asking, or you just want me to say it? You want me to say it? All right. All right. So Amplify is a science program that we are piloting. So I'll give just 10 seconds of background on that. Science units, we don't necessarily buy a whole curriculum of science. It could be that we buy this one Amplify unit, and that's actually all we do from Amplify. We don't have to buy that. So for years, we had some of our science units were done through what we called FOSS kits. So they are materials that are developed and designed to teach a specific unit. So for our pilot, we are piloting earth science, and the reason for that is because we actually weren't teaching any earth science in our elementary program, and we are required to teach earth science as part of the New York State Science Learning Standards, otherwise known as Next Gen. So earth science was a great place for us to pilot this, because we knew we were gonna have to do it no matter what. So we have, at first grade, spinning earth, and at kindergarten, sunlight and weather. And so teachers were able to open their boxes, see all their materials. Their website is very rich, Amplify, as well as we have teacher materials for the teachers to able to still put their hands on a book. So we did a half day with a trainer, and we are very excited that Christine Rosner is also going to be supporting the rollout of some of these units, which will provide teachers with the level of support that they really need to try something new in their classrooms, get a good sense of how it goes and how it works. And sometimes you just need an extra pair of hands when you have 22 kids in your classroom and a lot of materials. At kindergarten, they're gonna have to set up these lamps all over the room. I mean, that in and of itself, like, it's stressful to set up lamps all over your room with bulbs. I know that may not be something that people think about, but it is. So each thing takes a lot of thought, a lot of care. Where are you setting up those stations? How is it going to work? Who's going to be at those stations? So Christine Rosner is a tremendous support, as always, and is helping to support this as well.
Great.
Yeah.
And for those who aren't regular attendees, it's very dense in terms of the amount you're packing into that update. So there are whole presentations you could watch from last year to unpack some of the great information that you're sharing with us.
Yes.
Can I ask a few questions?
Okay.
Just quickly, in terms of since it was the first PLRD day, did you get any feedback from parents? Were there any mix-up with kids? Just curious how that day went. Did everybody pick their child up and take them home?
No, I did not hear of any challenges with parents. I did hear of one parent that, was disappointed that, it was having a negative impact on her.
But overall, successful.
I did not hear from other parents, and we sent out lots of communications
Yes,
related
that
to it
was
very
helpful.
deliberately, trying to prep folks for it. Leading into this school year, when we were discussing it at this level, after having had all the conversations in the schools leading up to it, I also reached out to all the child care centers in the community, so they were prepared to support families that utilize them for child care after school hours as well. So they were, on that end, it was seamless as well.
That's great. I just want to say congratulations, because I know last year when looking to adopt this, it was a little bit of a nervous point to
It's a
us, this
It's a change to
change
the
and to
calendar, to the-
coordinate it. So from my impression, but I don't have the children in the younger years, it did seem to go off fairly smoothly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
No,
And
I-
then more to come. I think, there's a lot for us to examine, as we do this. I mean, I think you also know we're the last school really in the Quad Village to adopt something like this. So it's not like we're so innovative,
Right.
but we want to make sure we're effective.
That's right.
That's great. And my only other question in regard to Amplify, the one point you just raised, I just want to better understand. When you said that we buy the materials, and this time it's earth science, is that the only? No.
Well, Amplify has other units. Amplify has multiple units for each grade to meet the standards. We have current science units that we're doing. So part of what we're trying to assess is we don't have to buy Amplify and amplify everything. We can say, you know what? We have certain units that currently meet the standards, and we don't necessarily need to do that. That's what we need to assess. That's really, to me, is the most important part of this, is to say, if this product is a good enough product, which it appears to be, then it opens the door to say, so now what? How far do we want to go? And maybe it would be in certain grade levels, we need to do 2 other Amplify units, but in another grade level, we actually don't, because they already have a good science unit that meets the standards. Or I think that we might also find that because of PLTW, there are certain units that we may not want a whole unit from them because we're meeting some of those standards for our engineering through PLTW. So there's a lot for us to look at, which is why earth science was such a good choice, because we actually weren't meeting the earth science standards anywhere in any of our grades. So that was why we thought long and hard about what would make the most sense, and that's why we selected earth science.
And just to restate it, because I think you included it somewhat in what you were just saying, is that Project Lead the Way units and Amplify units sort of sit side by side, addressing certain standards related to
Yeah, so let me just clarify. So for Project Lead the Way, for every grade level, there are 4 units of study. 2 engineering, 2 biomed, and one computer science. We could never get all 4 units done in a year. We just don't have enough time in any of our grade level, in the time of the year, because the units take so long to implement. So our commitment, as you know, because the commitment was made with our Board of Education, was computer science. We knew that we wanted to have a computer science strand that spanned K through 12. So the computer science module, it was a non-negotiable when we rolled out Project Lead the Way. We then selected the engineering because, again, we knew eventually New York State was going to adopt the standards, and we knew that we did not have an engineering component in our classrooms. It's certainly not a consistent approach. So as of right now, we do the computer science and an engineering unit. We know that some of the engineering will overlap with the New York State Science Learning Standards. Having said that, there are probably, the biomed could maybe overlap as well. It's not that we don't know that, we're gonna have to figure that out. So for now, we're looking at the 2 standards, the 2 units that we agreed to from PLTW from before, because New York was taking so long to adopt the standards. We had to make a decision. So we made the best decision at the time.
May I piggyback on these questions? So is what I hear you saying that the idea is a scaled process, right, potentially, where we worked with 1 unit, we may now work with 2 units in a grade, dependent on.
Which, are you in amplifier or are you in PLTW?
Amplify.
In amplify.
Yeah, amplify.
Yes.
Right.
Right,
So
exactly.
you're scaling, so I mean, I guess when we do the committee reports, that we could add this into, I think that would be a really good line of thinking for the curriculum committee to sort of talk about how that's scaling and should we scale it, because I
So
hear.
the scaling, but just to be clear, the scaling is based on the standards and based on our current curriculum.
yeah.
So we have certain grade levels that they're doing science units that actually have to go. They no longer align. So in those cases, we have
Right,
to
so
do
that's-
something else.
So you're targeting your scaling pilot based on that?
Yes, because I think that's ultimately what we need to do. Now, I think the secondary question in all of that is going to be, if Amplify is as awesome as it looks, well, then you say, you know what, we have this unit, we've been doing it for like 20 years. I don't know, maybe even though it's there and it meets the standards, maybe we actually want to up the ante here and use a higher quality program at this point. But we don't know that. That would be way too premature for me
Right,
to
and
say.
I think that would be an excellent fodder as part of the, and when we can talk about this again when we get to.
And what's an example of a unit that has to go? Like, what do they no longer teach, just out of curiosity?
Well, we don't know that yet.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Rocks
Got it,
and
okay.
minerals.
So that's what
Rocks
was,
and
right.
minerals, there you
So,
go, okay.
right, so we're looking now, and I guess the other thing I just want to be clear about is we have never really completely met the standards, even the old standards, because the reality is in the elementary school day, there is not enough time to teach all the social studies and all the science standards. So we pick and choose. So that also has to go into this decision-making. It's very layered, and it's just complex, but the science committee is awesome, and they know their stuff. So they're gonna really be able to tell us what makes the most sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just one last button, because it advertises an upcoming presentation. I'm just impressed to think about from where we were 5 years ago. I don't know how many computer science classes or units that we had to here K through 12, when it was 5 years ago, when it was maybe less than a handful.
Yeah, well, we didn't have anything
Yeah,
we
maybe-
didn't have anything at the elementary level, and even what we have now at the secondary level is
So it's quite a shift.
nice.
It's quadrupled at the high school.
So speaking of shifts, we'll, I don't know if, Carol, I don't want to jump on.
No,
We kind of, this next one's kind of your territory.
Yes, it is.
So there was one correction we need to make to our agenda.
Yeah, so I would ask that the board resolve to amend the agenda, adding a new 4.2, pushing the current 4.2 down to a 4.3, to allow for a presentation from our auditor this evening. And then we will also seek to amend the resolution by adding 7.6, and Peggy, I'll give you the language to this, and this will be a part of the consent agenda. Resolve that the Irvington Board of Education accept the 2017-18 audit report and financial statements. So if the,
While we're doing that, I noticed that there was the Is that
Adding
resolution
7.6.
document, were we doing anything with that, or is that just?
was a
whatever?
discussion item.
7.2.
It's a discussion item.
Is that somewhere in our?
Yeah.
So
agenda?
we're doing that.
11-1.
11-1, okay. So can I get a motion to accept that?
Second.
So that's David and Brian, all in favor?
Aye.
And with that, we can now move on to 4.2, a presentation of our 2017-18.
So I would like to invite our principal auditor, Jamie Coate, who is the principal with Bonadeo Group. So, Jamie?
Thank you, good evening.
Good evening.
It's on, Jane.
That's all right. We did see it.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us to present on the results of our 2018 audit. We previously met with the audit committee and went over the deliverables in detail. The deliverables being the audit of the financial statements and the audit of the extra classroom financial statements. To summarize the audit results for the year, the district's annual audit of the financial statements was completed using government auditing standards. As part of those standards, we are required to report on internal controls over financial reporting. We noted no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting. In addition, our independent auditors' reports, we provided for 6 opinions. All of those opinions were unmodified, meaning that's the highest level of assurance that a CPA firm can provide on a set of financial statements. In addition, we had no difficulties in performing our audit. We had no disagreements with management, and there were no audit adjustments as part of the audit. Some of the financial highlights for the year. The big event for the year was the adoption of GASB Statement Number 75, which relates to post-retirement benefits. As part of that implementation, the school district was required to catch up on its reporting of its liability, which increased from what was previously reported of $53 million to $120 million at the beginning of the year, and ended the year with $127 million. This liability represents the present value of the post-retirement benefits that are earned by its employees through June 30th, 2016. So that was the big event that had to be completed by all school districts in the state, as well as all governments. They have June 30th year ends and around the country. Another highlight for the year was that revenue exceeded budget. Revenue exceeded budgeted amounts by about $500,000, which is less than 1% of the total budgeted amount. And expenditures were less than budgeted amount by $700,000, which is approximately 1% of budgeted expenditures. So a positive front on the budget side. Also, the unassigned fund balance, which cannot exceed 4% of the $61 million 2019 budget, was exactly at 4%, as maximum amount allowed by law. So that is the financial highlights for the year. We also did the extra classroom financial statements, which were is the audit of the club's cash balances for the year, and that we rendered a qualified opinion on that, which is very common in the state, and that is because of the issue of completeness of revenues that are received by the central treasurer. So there was that was the opinion on those. So that concludes my report. If there's any further questions.
Yeah, could you speak a little bit more to the GASB 75 and just, I don't know if you can give, you mentioned that districts all across the state had to do it, and so similarly they saw large shifts in their
Yes.
liability. And in terms of annually, we are paying several $1 million, and so it's something that that doesn't change in terms of.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the liability increased significantly, but did not impact the amount that you pay on an annual basis that's budgeted in the general fund, which in the past year was, I believe, about $2.5 million. So on an annual annual basis, based upon the number of retirees you have and the amount of the premium that's charged, that will be budgeted each year. But that actually each year reduces the liability, but then there is other earnings of those benefits by current employees, which increases the liability. So you'll have this constant up and down of the liability each year.
So can you explain for the taxpayer that number you said 50-something million to 120 million and where that large leap goes? Where that comes from, what that means? I know that, just so that people understand that are watching.
Where it comes from?
Well, why does it go from 50-some-odd million to 120 million? I could see some faces sort of go, oh.
I see. Well, the increase is the number's always been there, so, and it's been calculated in the past, but never was on the financial statements. So you were allowed in the past to amortize the bigger number over 30 years. The Accounting Standards Board decided that you can no longer do that, so now you need to recognize that all at the same time.
Thank you.
All right, do you want to give a chance, does anybody from our audience want to ask a question since we have this opportunity with our auditor?
I'm Erin Bernstein. I'm the parent of a third grader at Dow's Lane. I'm just, who calculates the present value calculation? Does Bonadino do that, or do you have another outside firm come in and do the present value calculation?
That is done by a actuary that the school district hires.
Okay. And can I ask what assumptions were used in that in terms of like a discount rate and a present? Do you have any of that information? Or?
Sure. The discount rate used was 3%.
Oh, it's a lot. Okay.
And that discount rate is prescribed by the Accounting Standards Board. So they said that you have to use a certain, municipal bond rating indice.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, great, well, I appreciate your thorough presentation
Do your talk.
to the audit committee. You answered a number of our questions and it was very informative, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And I just, if I could just add, as we're transitioning to committee reports, in the audit committee report, I did extend accolades to
Yes.
Carol and to Tiana Trong, who's trying to run out right now.
Pick the right camera angle.
An audit report as positive as the one the board just received doesn't happen without the fine work of the individuals that manage our money from day to day. So kudos to Tiana and Carol for their good
In
work.
fact, one thing that was shared with the audit committee was that the work was completed so quickly within the end of the year, fiscal year, that it was the first one out of the gate in terms of being audited. So
Yeah.
moved along quickly.
Thank you.
Nice
So
job.
thank you.
Good work.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
So I believe this is now item 4.3, the committee reports. This is our first shot at doing it this year. We've had a number of our committee meetings, and some of our liaisons have been able to participate in some meetings or gain some information they might share as well. So I'll start with our Buildings and Grounds, which is working on one of our most prominent initiatives this year, which is the capital bond project planning. So is there someone who you've designated to sort of get the ball rolling?
Maria.
No, and that gives me an opportunity. I'm so sorry. Maria is not able to attend tonight, and she's very sorry she's not here to get the ball rolling on the Buildings and Grounds Committee report. But I know she's ably supported by her co-committee members.
So I guess it's in the playbill, playing the role of Maria is myself, I guess.
All right,
So,
be a good show.
won't go that far. You haven't seen me act or sing.
There's about 10 jokes here. Not
Yeah.
mentioning.
So, as I think everyone knows, the B&G committee has been working on a capital plan for some time, and we are, in the fall, have been moving forward in starting to put together, the priorities of projects, and most importantly, trying to understand the cost associated with those projects in cost estimates, so we can start to figure out which projects we want to prioritize based on not just need, but also cost. And I think there's really been, I'd say, three main, buckets that the items fall under. One is security improvements across all of the buildings. Two would be general maintenance items that we unfortunately have a fair amount of, whether it be resurfacing gym floors, boilers, roofs, all the things that we need to keep our physical plant in shape and ensure that we have the facilities that are befitting of our district and our students. And then obviously there's, I would say, then a bunch of miscellaneous items that go in that third bucket, whether it be storage for athletic equipment so they don't deteriorate, looking to have storage for our vehicles. We unfortunately don't have a garage right now for our district vehicles, so we don't get as much life out of them as we would like because of that. So we're looking at things like that, as well as hopefully things that are probably more visible, like flexible learning spaces and other enhancements at the different buildings. But at the end of the day, until we start to see what the different projects will cost, it's really hard at this stage to know where we're going to land in terms of recommendations. The goal is by early November, hopefully, to have cost estimates, at which point the committee will circle back and present to the board recommendations in terms of here are the projects we're recommending and why, along with the current cost estimate for those projects. Here are the projects that we're not recommending and why, and along with the cost of those projects, so that the full board can have a further discussion on all those items.
And in terms of when you talk about items, we've had a presentation in June and one last month, and those list the items. So essentially what we'll see is a continuation of those items being presented, but now they're starting to be differentiated. Here's the estimated cost and where they fall in terms of the recommendation.
Exactly. And what we've been trying to do at the committee level is initially prioritize the items, based on our needs. Things like a new roof, boiler. Those are things that we can't go without doing. So there's certain projects that we feel we absolutely have to tackle.
Right.
And now the key is understanding the cost of those absolute necessary items, so we can then start to prioritize the other items around that. But we're going to come to you initially with here are the things that we absolutely have to do, just from a going forward basis that we've been deferring for too long and we really think are priorities, and the costs associated with those. And then here's going to be the next level of projects that we would recommend and the cost, and here's what may or may not make it be at the end of the day because cost. But it's that bigger group really reorganized into more tiers with cost estimates, because also, something that is right now a tier 3 project, if there's 5 of them that can be done very cheaply, that may impact how we look at it. If there's something in tier 2 that's prohibitively expensive, that then may fall off and we'll be able to bring other projects up. So that's the goal, really in the next month, to be able to do that further work and come back with more defined recommendations.
And at the prior presentation that was given, a lot of it rested on the timeline being affected by the secret process, and I guess that's still a work in progress in terms of what projects will land where in terms of a secret, whether it's a type 1 or type 2, and which one is the one that's longer?
Type 1 is longer, type 2 is shorter. We're hopeful that our projects would be in the shorter type 2 process. So we're working in the committee, and hopefully we'll come back either later this month or beginning of the next month to talk about whether we should be going forward with that process now to get in the queue and get moving, which may be able to accelerate our timeline so that we'd be in a position late winter to be able to go out, if we were ready to go out with a vote at that point in time, as opposed to waiting until the spring. So, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, because obviously we want to make sure we have not just that process going, but we want to make sure that even if that is ready, if the board hasn't had sufficient time to review the projects and get comfortable, we don't want to just speed up, but we would obviously like to be in a position to, if we can go out for a vote in February or March timeline, that may be an option based on the secret process and also finishing up the committee and full board discussion.
Great. And then just in terms of the community participation, there's work developing communications, there's forums coming that will be coming in addition to our board meetings, so the community will have a chance to.
Absolutely. I think, it's a little premature right now to figure out when those will be, because part of it's dependent on the committee making its recommendations and seeing where items will land. And, I think as people have heard me say in the committee meetings all too much, until we have cost information, it's really hard to shape that process further. So, at this point, we have a construction management firm that's in place and has been interfacing with the architects and getting detailed information to try to present quality cost estimates, so that will really shape our work.
So that's the next big step, is you'll come back with a presentation with the cost estimates.
Yes, and recommendations based on both the needs and the costs for what projects we're recommending and what projects at this time we don't think are feasible for one reason or another.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any other questions? All right. So I don't, we didn't coordinate about the communications committee, but I do have our minutes up, so I could lead off unless, yeah, sound good? All right. So the Buildings and Grounds Committee, you've been rolling along since last year and just rolled through summer and into fall. We had a chance to sort of sit together in the Communications Committee and review our committee goals and take a fresh look, starting with our goals from last year and this year. And so some of the things we noted were that the committee is committed to enriching the quality and efficacy of communication with the school community, engaging stakeholders on critical initiatives such as the Craftwell bond. So we look to partner with you in terms of helping with that communication, and also with the strategic plan, which is an ongoing initiative. A feature that we've had trouble knowing where to house as a board is advocacy. So we're looking to devise an approach that is helps inform, allow for discussion, and coordinate action on issues. We have one in our agenda today related to the issue around the charitable donations for deductions, which has been a possibility that we got pushed back from the IRS, but there are a number of districts that are looking to see if perhaps we can continue to push on that front. So we have a resolution in our agenda today. And then, continuing on from one of our major projects from prior years was the new district website was debuted in June, has had met with a really great positive response. I find it, where I didn't really go to the website before, it's a regular tool that I use to go to find information now, so that I think hopefully is a similar experience for others in terms of being an effective resource. So we just want to continue to support its success and in terms of the tools that it offers and the information that's available on it. So these different initiatives, strategic initiative, strategic plan, capital plan are things that people should be able to easily find information about going forward as more information is available. So that really was the bulk of our conversation. Similarly, in linking with the Buildings and Grounds Committee, we talked about, and there's a good parallel here, there's some overlap in the committees and the thinking of linking with the Curriculum Committee. Obviously, we have amazing knowledge in terms of what can be shared by our Assistant Superintendent of Instruction, but in partnership, we can figure out about what pieces we can continue to explain to community members who don't have the opportunity always to come and enjoy and become informed at the great presentations that are shared. So we can have that partnership in terms of communication around curriculum. We are also going to explore, together with the full board, looking at ways in which we are present and visible in the community. We do a lot, but it's been very informal, and so maybe we can just have some more organized thinking around that. Back to the advocacy front, when I talked about charitable trust, we have something that we haven't really participated in last year too, because it's been far away, but we have our NYSBA, the New York State School Board Association Convention, coming up at the end of this month. That's a great opportunity to meet school board trustees and superintendents and officials from around the state.
Michael, would you mind telling us, all the public, what the acronym stands for?
NYSBA, the New York State School Board Association, absolutely. NYSBA. It's, and they have a convention yearly, and it moves around the state, and we don't necessarily have the opportunity or take the opportunity to travel upstate when it's there, but a number of us will be going to the one this year because it's in New York. So in addition to meeting folks, and they have a number of information sessions where we can learn a lot about work related to what we do. NYSBA also advocates for school districts in Albany, and so one of the documents that we're reviewing as a board and will look to approve all or parts of at our next meeting are resolutions that are then voted on by all school districts participating at the convention, and that basically gives the sort of the marching orders for NYSBA in terms of what it's advocating for with our legislators and our officials in Albany when it comes to education. So that I think covers a lot. We could always go on with any of these, but do you have any questions related to communications? Great. Similarly, does anybody want to take over on curriculum committee?
I have the notes up.
You have the notes up?
Yeah. So the curriculum committee met on September 21st, meets monthly. Consists of Michael, Beth, and myself, Raina and Chris, Dr. Kaur and Dr. Harrison. And the first meeting of the year essentially was a goal-setting meeting, renewing our goals for the year, discussing the existing structures that exist. You saw one of them at play tonight when Dr. Kaur presented from her position in the agenda, all about what's going on with science and the New York State Science Learning Standards, et cetera. So that will be a bi-weekly, twice a month occurrence. And she has that slot to update us on all the different things. We had also talked a great deal about really, like Michael was alluding to in conjunction with the communications committee, sort of the notion of how the Rubicon component can be more of a benefit as a roadmap for parents to follow their children's course of study.
Rubicon being the written curriculum unit.
The written curriculum
that are
online.
available online.
And of course, just to clarify, there's a parent-facing version and a much deeper, richer educator version, so the parents see the friendly version for themselves. We talked about one of the biggest things that we accomplished during the meeting was really attempting to align the curriculum committee meetings with the presentations that are going to be lining up as the year goes on, which is a real nice shift for us as the board to support the administration in the work that they're trying to do in the betterment of student programming. I think that pretty much sums it up for now.
Right, those are opportunities for, again, that partnership. Obviously, there's deep and ongoing work done by the administration and the faculty, but that gives us a chance to sort of ask questions and for administrators to get perspective of the kinds of questions that we as trustees and members of the community might have related to those.
So that we in turn can support parents who have lots of questions and
That's right.
are invested in their kids.
So, excellent. And right now, we have, both have been referenced already, an upcoming presentation later this month related to technology instruction and Project Lead the Way. And in November, related to a long-range plan, which is great because that's something that we've all desired to talk about, and the moment is arriving. So I heard you note earlier that it's something that you're looking forward to discussing.
It's gonna be a lot of work, but
Yeah.
I think it's work that's gonna help vision start to be able to play out.
Yes. So, very good. And then we have Policy Committee.
Yep, we also met on September 18th, myself, Brian, and Maura. And Dave is our alternate, always standing ready for policy, met. And we too reviewed our goals, which I think these minutes are available, but basically we're just working through the policies. Last year we spent majority of our time on the 4000 series. That's over 60 pages long. I would guess, right, Chris? I think
It's
we're probably 80.
80-some pages
Yeah,
long, and we're in the
80-some.
60s.
Saying we finally made it to 60, page 60, so we're plugging along. So we're going to continue with that 4,000 series, and similar to last year, as new policies are presented to us that come out of New York State, such as the sexual harassment policy that's up on the board today, will be out of sequence because those are the ones that we have to prioritize to get approved and adopted by the board.
Requirements, right.
And there are requirements, yes. So we left off on policy 4710. I personally will be thrilled when we're through with the 4,000 series, because it will feel like a huge accomplishment, right, team? But we're waiting at this point for the ones that we did work through last year, the last minute kind of questions that had to be answered to come back, and then they'll be presented to the board for first review, second review, and adoption. So this board has not seen the bulk of what we did last year, because there's still some fine tuning to be presented and adopted, but just
So
you
some
wait.
good December holiday
Just
reading?
The 4,000
Just you
series?
wait, sit back, they're coming to you.
In the 4,000?
But what I will do, I created for the committee an overview document that outlines the work that we've done along this way of renewing our policy manual. And when I actually sat down one evening to put this together, it kind of made me feel good, because it's a piece that's frustrating, like we're still at it. But when you look at the pure number of policies that we've reviewed in the last few years, the board should feel good about the progress that we've made so far, and so I'll share that doc with the full board.
Well, we did make a commitment, at least 2 years ago. You had said it was hard to get the committee to meet, the board members, that is, to be participants, because the hour we meet now is at 7:15 in the morning in order to pull it off. But because of that commitment, I think 2 years ago, we are finally working our way through them.
Great. So in other news, we have, I don't know, our Community Advisory Board liaison, or additionally, Village of Irvington, or any other liaisons who want to jump forward with anything that they'd like to share with the board administration?
Am I on? Because I know
You're
my
on, I
mic
hear
always
you.
has a problem.
Yeah.
No, it was good to hear, I had taken on the liaison to the Irvington PTSA and to the Village of Irvington, and it was very heartening to hear the amount of communication that goes back and forth between our administration and both of those entities. And it's pretty exciting, and I don't think the superintendent would mind my sharing this, that the district is already involved in the Pollinator Pathways project, which is, strongly supported by the Greater Irvington Land Trust and other aspects of our village, including the Recreation Department, the O'Hara Nature Center. It looks like it's going to be an amazing program, and it, provides that kind of loop between our extremely special village and our school district. And there are some other projects on the way, but one in specific, which I think is good to just raise generally, is the year 2026 is going to be the 250th anniversary of the Revolutionary War of 1776, and already the Irvington Historical Society, which has a relationship with our school district, is working on projects for that year, and there'll be news to come over the coming year on that. We've already got the Westchester Historical Society interested, and the administrators are interested as well.
That's cool.
Great, and I know Maria is the liaison to CAB.
Yes.
But I'll just share that with the support of IAS-CAB, we are fortunate to have Dr. Dewey, nationally, internationally known neuropsychologist with specialty in the area of substance abuse, that presented back in the spring to the school community. He has actually been working in our health classes, and it's been extremely well received by our students and staff alike. So we wouldn't have been able to provide that experience without their support.
Great. That's great to hear. Again, I had mentioned that the New York State School Board Association meeting is coming up. We also have a really strong organization regionally, the Westchester Putnam School Boards Association, and I attended their Legislative Action Committee meeting, in which we looked at those resolutions I mentioned that are being proposed to be voted on at the upcoming convention. So the opportunity there is that 25 or so districts from our 46 in Westchester, and I guess there's more in Putnam, I don't know the number. We're looking, and what's great in general with being able to participate in West Putt is you see the relationship, the commonality in terms of the concerns and the issues between our districts. So to go through those resolutions together, and I've shared, you know, there was basically consensus across the board on those resolutions. So it's a real opportunity, whether at the PTSA or the board or as administrators, that we have the opportunity to work with our fellow districts to support public education. So that's the update from West Putt, otherwise known as Westchester Putnam School Boards Association. Okay, great. We covered our committee and liaison reports. I do want to give another opportunity for community comment, now that we've, in addition to our audit report, talked about committee reports. If there are any questions related to items that appear on the agenda, community members are welcome to ask any questions. Very good. Next up, we have our consent agenda. Can I get a motion to accept our consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. All right, so Deb and Brian. And I'm just going to mention, as Deb mentioned, we are updating a notice of Board of Education meetings policy and a sexual harassment policy. We are, because of numbers, you know, participants voting to approve a merger of modified teams between Hastings and Irvington. There's a resolution mentioned before about charitable trusts, and let me just jump ahead to 10.2 because, well, let me do the vote first. All in favor?
Aye.
So I want to thank the PTSA. I know we have several members here with us tonight, and included in the grants that we approved were the video surveillance network of cameras that Dr. Harrison mentioned. What does Kim Sutton do at Dow's Lane and Main Street? Is that
PTSA grant.
that's PTSA
Kim
grant?
Sutton. So
Yeah.
Kim Sutton is our March Superintendent's Conference Day. So I think you might remember, I think it was here, where I referred to sometimes on a Superintendent's Conference Day when you have somebody come in who is a guru, and Kim Sutton is a guru, and it might have been in curriculum committee, and I talked about how 5 years ago, we weren't really ready to have that kind of a person come in. We were still building our skills and our capacity around teaching mathematics, using the new standards. And so PTSA has generously, is supporting the Kim Sutton grant. She'll be here, she'll be working for part of the day with our K-2 teachers, and then the other half of the day with our 3-5 teachers, giving them strategies to use in the classroom in teaching math. So we're excited. She's
Great.
very well known.
I'm glad I asked. That was
Yes.
informative. And then they also support the ongoing Eyes on Art program at Dow's Lane, and something new, alternative seating. So I look forward to seeing that, among other things, when we have our visits to schools later in the year.
Can we ask what that is?
Sure.
What is alternative seating option?
I am not,
I think they created a area at Dow's Lane where they put some flexible seating furniture, and the classes can go to that one area and have like a class session there, and it's a different way of teaching for the kids.
Yeah, accommodate different types of instruction, different types of learning. They literally have,
No, but that's a new one.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That's basically what it needs.
yeah,
Oh.
supplement.
They can change all the.
So it's additional to something that already exists. Very good. So that consent agenda is approved.
Can I ask one question, Michael, just
Yeah.
out of curiosity? So when we merged the Hastings and Irvington modified football team,
Yes.
that's for next year in September?
No, it is
This
the current
this
year.
So are there jerseys Irvington? What do we call
They
it?
are actually,
Oscar?
Hastings is the.
Yeah, I didn't want to joke.
Hastings, they're green,
Uh-huh.
but they're green and yellow because Hastings is the host program.
So it says,
It's a Hastings football.
so
jersey.
our Irvington modified players are playing with a
Yes.
Hastings jersey?
Yes, they are.
And this is now going forward for
It is
next
for,
year as well, or we
it's
approve it every
currently
year?
for this year.
Oh,
We'll,
for
we'll
this year.
evaluate next year to see where we are.
Gotcha.
Yes.
And we've seen the numbers go up and down over the last few years.
Yes, football participation is an area of concern. A couple of years ago, we talked about field hockey, and our numbers in field hockey are really taking off, and we're
They
seeing
are.
lots of interest in the program, which is excellent. But football across the region is really something we need to watch. It was, I think, Edgemont and Hastings for varsity merged this year because neither school had enough to field their own team.
Right, and do we send our students to Hastings for practice, and the games are all held in Hastings?
Correct. I think we'll actually play, we will play a couple games here in Irvington as well.
But the practice is in
Yes, they're practicing in Hastings.
Because I'm sure parents are going to ask.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Any other questions before we move along? All right, so our next, we have a board discussion on the twice or thrice mentioned NISBA advocacy resolutions, which is a document that has been shared, and I don't know if there are any
Sitting in front of me.
questions. There is a document in front of you, though I have to find where my copy is.
There's another copy.
You know, just as you reflect on these, they essentially, these resolutions are among many more that have been approved in prior years. The first few, when they're called sunsetting, when their resolutions are approved by NISBA, they are then a part of what's being advocated for by NISBA in Albany for the next 5 years. So ones that are still ongoing can be recommended for adoption. And then some of these, the remaining ones are ones that various school districts put forward. And some of them are things that all districts could benefit from. Some of them are written specifically for certain districts, but don't impact other districts. And so it's you know, one example is one that we actually had passed, was it last year, in which we realized when we expanded our board from 5 to 7 that the laws around it were very awkward and forced us to have that election in the middle of summer. So our resolution, which was approved, was advocating for those elections to occur aligned with the regular election subsequent year after being approved. So that didn't affect many districts, but people said it made sense, so it was supported. And so essentially, most of these were met without much question in terms of broad support. Some were suggested that there be small adjustments, such as in number 16, New York NISBA supports state legislation that would allow school districts by vote of the school board the option to hold their school district elections at publicly accessible locations within their district boundaries based on security concerns. So we want to add the word school to, which we can make an amendment within their school district boundaries. And this is something that's come up. What does that mean? Is that, you know, we just had a primary election and those occurred, those occurred in our schools. And so in some places, there's the opportunity to relocate those votes, which are not school votes, to other locations if appropriate and available.
So by way of example, with, you know, a gubernatorial election and midterm elections coming up next month, we've already engaged in conversation with the village to have a police officer present, because we do have Dow's Lane as a polling site. So we certainly would like to see opportunities to have elections move.
Yeah.
And then I draw your attention to item number 18, because we referenced Smart Schools bond in our audit committee. We have a application that's just sitting there in queue, waiting for the committee to meet to either say yay or nay on our money.
So that state committee does not meet regularly, so this
They
would force them
rarely
to
ever meet.
regularly.
Yeah, it's making them meet monthly.
What does as not recommended mean? 19 and 20?
They're not recommended.
It's support, NISBA, this was put forward by a district, the NISBA committee said that they didn't support it, and we agreed with that assessment
Got
not
it.
to support it.
Got it.
I'm scanning through, trying to find the one I had a question on. It was, number 13, the piggybacking of transportation services. I was interested, but don't quite know what it means in practice.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, obviously, we have a shared service already. I believe in some, this is more for rural districts, this particular, I don't know that you are familiar with
It
this.
probably could be for anything, but piggybacking is when you write a contract, you specifically allow for piggybacking. So it's usually used in purchasing or other type of shared service contracts. But when you write that contract, you specifically have to put language in that would allow for piggybacking, which would mean that other municipalities or entities could then join that same bid at that same pricing. So So it would just give an option for someone to bid that way on a transportation contract, because right now it is excluded in law for that, where it's allowed in purchasing, so it's not allowed in transportation.
Okay, that's
So
better
would it
information. than I
change
had.
anything in our practice if this were to be approved?
It would potentially could change, it could potentially change that maybe more districts could more readily add on to our shared service contract. But that would also depend if Ardsley wanted to, we would have to rebid it out that way, because the person the company that's bidding it would have to know that that pricing then would be extended. The tricky part would be that sometimes bus companies would not have capacity, so they might not want to allow it. So you'd have to write the bid the right way.
Where I see the real,
I think there's no harm in having it in the law, and then you could write the bid the way you want to write the bid.
where I see the real benefit surfacing is when we consider out-of-district transportation for special education, let's say, by way of example, that it would give the opportunity for us to partner with more districts to be able to lower costs locally for each of the quad villages.
Thank you.
Very good. So, if there are no other questions, there's the opportunity, we'll have it as part of our agenda next meeting. So you have the opportunity to reflect on those. Now, if I can find our agenda, we are, have yet another opportunity for community comment, if there anyone at this time. Excellent. Okay. And so I will now share that our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, October 23rd at 7:30 p.m. here in the campus presentation room. I would ask for a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing pending litigation. We also are carrying over conversations, so student matter as well.
So moved.
Second?
So that was David and Brian, all in favor?
Aye.
We'll take just a 4 or 5 minute break and start again.
Thank you for coming.